Okay, good morning. Thought I'd show you this morning a little bit about the Yamaha 650 molds that make carburetor sockets. It's a flange carburetor socket for the Yamaha 650. And what I'm doing today is I'm going to set it up for making the sockets for a BS34 carburetor, which is a little bit smaller carb spigot, and I'm changing it to make ones for BS38 carb spigot. And that's because I'm low on the BS38s. In fact, I'm sold out, so I have to make some more of them. And these molds are matched. They have match marks on them. You'll also find written on the mold that it's for the Yamaha 650, and it has an L on there. That means it makes the left socket. And this one over here, you'll see, has an R on it. It makes the right socket. Also, these plates that go on there, you'll see have an R on there, so that you can put these on there and they'll be matched together to make the part with the proper angle of the socket in there, because these sockets have a compound angle on them. See, the BS34, they were made, the last one's made take the BS34. It's a smaller carb spigot. Earlier bikes, in fact, most of the bikes made take for BS38, but you'll notice it has a compound angle. It's kind of tilted at an angle like this, so this goes on the head like that. And the idea is to make the carburetors, when they fit in here, both carburetors are parallel, and that was so that they could have a shaft between the two carburetors and actuate them together. Other than that, there's no reason to have them angled like that. I also have a mold for doing the straight sockets, which is basically just like this. It's sitting over there, except for it doesn't have this plate at an angle. It would be straight across there. This one I had to make it an angle to get this compound angle business on here. So these parts of the mold are going to be the same for any angled socket, and the one over there that's straight is used on any straight socket. You don't really need a right and a left. There wouldn't be an L or an R for the straight ones, but I still have two molds, so I can make them two at a time. The idea of this particular system I got on these is that they're both made to the same height, so that when I'm molding parts, I can put two molds in the press at the same time. There'll be two of them fit in there, and you run them down together and it makes two parts at once, but you have to open two separate molds. It's not as efficient because of so many parts you're taking apart. You got parts scattered all over the table and they're all matched and everything. So it's a little bit slower than if you had just one mold that would open and you'd pull out two parts. And I suppose I could take and make these plates and bolt them onto a sub plate or something and fasten them together so everything would come out together. But for the limited production I do on these, I think this system works all right. What I'm going to show you right now is how I change the setup to go from the BS34 to the BS38. You can see, if you can see on this camera, you can see the difference in the diameter. So I'm going to just show you how I change that setup. Now I also have some here that makes something for a VM carburetor, a smaller carburetor that they use on them yet. And of course this one's even smaller than this. You can see the difference in the diameters. I guess that camera can see that. But there is a difference in those two, you see. And also it looks like the spigot's a little deeper on this. And certainly the bore where it goes into the engine, this part's the same. And these I made from aluminum because they're pretty limited production. I don't make too many of those. And aluminum does not stick as well to the rubber, so the part comes out a little easier. So I just made these mandrels out of aluminum. I don't use them very often. Now, I'm going to show you how we change these. There's a flathead screw here in the center, which I'll take loose. You can turn the mandrel if you want to, like that, to get it off there. It's a tapped hole in the bottom. And once you get that out of there, you'll see that it's pretty flat. This is an L, so it's for the left one. So what I do is make sure this is real clean on there. In fact, if you want to, you can go over it with a little bit of steel wool or something like this, just to make sure there's no rubber or anything on there. Okay, now you're going to take this and put on. Now you'll notice these got a little clearance on the back. I've found that relieving these rather than leaving this face straight makes it seal a little tighter around the edges, gives you a more precise part, because aluminum's always expanding and contracting, and sometimes you can get a little skin of rubber under there. And of course, what I want to do is make the part come out as clean as I can with a limited amount of flash. So what I do is I put this mandrel on there, just finger tight. Doesn't have to be very tight at all. And then I bring the mold part, the cavity part, over, and I set this down on there. Now you'll see the L here and the L there. That's going to be my match marks to line it up. So this makes the left-hand side carburetor socket. I put that in there so that the mandrel is down inside this hole. That kind of puts it in directly in the right location when I tighten this bolt here. And I don't tighten it very tight. Just snug is good enough. Don't try to make them too tight, because when that aluminum expands, it's going to really get tight. So just snug is good enough. It won't move. When it gets hot, that'll be tight in there. And of course, this is another mold that's made with the little spring washer, so the air is used to open the mold. So that one's all set to go. So that would go into press. And it's going to be exactly the same with the other one. Now, when I go to get the part out of there, I found the parts will be stuck in this part of the cavity here on these pins, and it's kind of hard to get them out of there because you can't get a hold of them very well with your gloves. So I made this little tool which locates on the